しかも周りのいたっきれの意味が
Just get in the robot, Minamo. We opened this week, refreshingly enough, with the villains of the show. Yeah, again, when the other show de-emphasizes their baddies so much, it's just cool to see these guys get actual build-up. In this case, we were introduced to Callisto, who we'd learned by the end of this episode was the supposed ace of the band Snatch. Yeah, unfortunately, he doesn't really do anything this week, other than maybe kind of gaslight Bess into action, if that was his intention. Oh well, at least we filled out all the shadows in this part of the opening, and now all we're missing is Dr. Claw here, who will hopefully, when he's introduced, will explain the band's deal and all that. Yeah, while I do think the show handles its villains better, I do think this and Precure should provide motivation sooner rather than later for their villains. Anyway, after the opening, we immediately got another song with Nacchi finally being able to hold her concert and knock it out of the park, as she does have a surprisingly really good singing voice. Something that you actually might miss out on if you just watch the music video they uploaded to their official YouTube page, because I swear something is off about the audio in it. But yeah, still a really nice and well-deserved moment for Nacchi, which hey, considering that Toy's two major forerunners are in the middle of their respective 6 Ranger arcs, maybe this show should also start considering its own ratings booster, just saying. Anyway, Navir confirmed that her popularity was on the rise, and hopefully won't translate into trust value because that stuff is more a burden than anything. And interestingly, Nacchi was doing all of this on her own time away from the princesses, which was a nice subtle way of establishing how this was actually a living world where anything could happen. Oh, thanks, Minamo. Now we have to buy a new monitor. Actually, she just so happened to be in sync with this girl who was practicing her kung fu, though 2/3 of our heroines weren't able to pick up on this, and they actually mistook it as a dance, which, to be fair, can be a thing if Jackie's doing it. But yeah, this girl named Mikan thankfully wasn't just another Chinese stereotype, and was more just a girl interested in the culture, kind of like Nagase, who of course, as a tomboy, was probably the only one of this team who's actually watched Chinese kung fu movies. Which Kung Fu Panda is your favorite? And for God's sake, you better not say the 4th one. And I guess Kung Fu Memcho here was actually influenced by Jackie Chan's little Bollywood number, as she was trying to combine her love for Kung Fu with dancing. And yeah, it actually does make a lot of sense, as timing is a key factor in both dance and martial arts, with Mikan even explained the importance of stepping hard and in sync with her fist in order to really release the optimum amount of ki. I never practiced Kung Fu myself, but I did take Kendo lessons, and the same practices do basically apply for when you try to hit somebody with this big stick. But yeah, I really love it when shows encourage creative thinking like this that's able to link to some very real-world practices and disciplines. It's all in service of the show's ongoing theme of encouraging expressionism through the passions of these girls in their own creative ways. Which was something that our lead heroine still needed to play catch up on, especially with Nacchi just having made her debut. Thus, Kaguri and Nagase decide to very forcefully drag Minamo away to consult her. Yeah, it's probably worth mentioning that this is another episode storyboarded by Nabishin. Hell, knowing him, I bet he was the one who suggested this very blatant parody. Nice that the same thing about that show back in the day when I didn't really get why people kept saying it was so deep, and even now I still don't get it. Though to be fair, this is probably one of the most accurate depictions of Cele, planks of void with no dimensions. Anyway, after cleaning up to at least try to avoid a lawsuit, Nagase suggested Minamo could leave a stronger impression with an expressive costume. Well, at least you're legally distinct from the Dragon Quest final bosses. Eventually, Minamo brought up probably the most obvious issue with her making videos, the fact that she was a nervous wreck. Thus, she asked her friends if they did any sort of rituals before performing to get over the jitterbugs. Kaguri surprisingly didn't do anything because she always likes to express herself, which is actually a decent bit of character building for her, but does absolutely nothing for poor Minamo. Meanwhile, Nagase... Okay, I joke, but I'm starting to think that these cats actually are going to become princesses later. And yes, that includes Suke-san, don't judge. But yeah, Kaguri clarified that that was basically animal therapy, which does work. However, Minamo didn't own any pets. You ever get that feeling like you're being watched by a serial killer? But yeah, hilariously enough, I think we got another bit of Hiro Shimono just ad-libbing most of Navier's lines here, as Minamo was bad touching the hell out of him. Meanwhile, Best launched the attack on the side character who was clearly being spotlighted throughout this episode. And to her credit, Mikan was able to push the pawns back, but that's all she was really able to do, as I do think they were trying to establish how even some of the strongest normal humans can't actually damage these guys. Thus, in the end, he created a powered-up pawn, which, yeah, I don't think we've seen one of those in a hot minute. I guess these particular enemy types were supposed to be like the jacks of all trade, but as we'd see when they absorbed a strong victim of the week, they could also upgrade to a lightning bruiser. Is there a Rush Hour clip for this? Oh, I know.
Let me go, I love Chinese people!
Fortunately, Kaguri realized that this pawn was also copying Mikan's fighting style, meaning that even though it could float, it was instinctively hitting the ground, which she took advantage of by using Kaede's Muse essence to produce some butter. Now, I would ask why she's suddenly getting all the attention when this episode has been mostly a Minamo spotlight, but then I quickly forget anything as soon as I see the rising volcano. What can I say, I'm just a simpleton for pretty colors, okay? Anyway, they saved Mikan, who thanked them for saving her, but also had some regrets. Don't worry, in our universe, you are allowed to fight monsters, along with your really poorly written father. But yeah, Minamo assured her that it was okay if she didn't fight monsters, as that was more their job, and everyone in the Alice Spear had their own specialties and talents that they could discover for themselves. Which, yeah, those are words that Minamo should take to heart herself. Anyway, the episode ended with, as I said, Callisto saying that he'd face the princesses next time for likely the first big boss fight of the series. This was a pretty alright episode, though it was mostly just here for build-up for next week. I mean, don't get me wrong, while this was probably the truly most fillery episode of the show so far, it was still pretty entertaining. Part of that was, of course, Nabashine's storyboarding, but also, they did have a pretty interesting victim of the week. Probably the most consistent element of the show so far has been its approach when it comes to themes of creative expression. All of the girls who visit the Alice Spear are given the resources they need for their own personal pursuits and are allowed to let them blossom. This week, we finally got to see Nacchi getting her concert, and Mikan had a very interesting approach when it came towards Kung Fu. As someone who practiced Kendo, I actually appreciate the emphasis on ki and how it ended up playing into a pretty good fight this week. Meanwhile, Minamo continued to try and work out how she wanted to approach her own little bit of creative expressionism. And the steps she's been taking have made sense, and more importantly, especially in this episode, they have been incredibly entertaining, thanks to some fun direction, and yeah, the Ava references always get a kick out of me. It's all good, and pretty interesting character building for Minamo. That said, yeah, there's also nothing much else to this episode, and we probably could have just have gone into our first battle with Callisto. Still, overall, I can't complain too much when I at least am being entertained, and am getting a decent sense of development for the lead of the show. While it will still take Minamo a little while to get into her own metaphorical robot, at least her journey probably won't end with the world being turned into Tang or something. Thank you for watching, and I am sorry if this ends up coming out a little later than usual. My Sunday this week was a little more busy than usual. Regardless, I think we should be able to get out our other videos for this week in a timely manner, as long as nothing else happens, knock on wood. Look forward to Kamen Rider Gav, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and we're not all the same, dude.